Hello, my friends, and welcome back. Thank you very much for being with me again today. I learned in my life that there are many ways to be a weasel, and one of them is weasels are cowards, just so you know, among others, is not to say that, hey, I will not help you, but show up late. I'll come and help you, and then after everything is done, you show up and say, I didn't know. I thought it was 5:40 when we were supposed to meet. I know you started at, I don't know, whatever, 5 hours early. So you come after the whole event finished, so you didn't help at all. So you say, oh, well, I came, but it must have been a misunderstanding. Boom, that's a weasel. So I think this is what might be happening right now between the West, NATO, and Ukraine. They show up late. Late to what? To the Russian invasion and the Russian counteroffensive, new offensive, the one that started a few days ago. And how should I put it? It's hard for me to believe that the Western intelligence services did not know the Russians will start their offensive in February. Even the weasels in the mass media trumpeted all the time that the Russians will start their offensive to mark the 1 year anniversary of the invasion, and they're symbolistic and they like symbolism, Reznikov said, and all that. Well, I don't think they didn't know. And they could have sent certain kind of weapons to help the Ukrainians withstand the Russian attacks. It seems like the Russians are, according to the Western mass media and the Ukrainians, which are trying to minimize that to a certain extent, because they minimize it when they say we're losing this, but on the other hand, they make it like, oh, we lose big, give us weapons. So if they say, oh, you're losing, but not that bad, we're not going to send you weapons. Remember about 2 months ago, December, they all said going to be airplanes coming, fighter jets, there are going to be hundreds of tanks coming. They didn't know about the Russian plan to speed up the process. Well, you can't really speed up the process with training, but then anyway, it seems like it's bad timing. The Russians will do their offensive, and these guys, I don't know, this offensive could determine the end of it, or they can block it, and then when this guy's going to bring the weapons, they start a counteroffensive, and Russians being weak, they will not have time to bring more troops, therefore they will be pushed wherever. The problem is, I have here an article, and it seems like the Americans, Blinken, that guy, yeah, below 86 IQ, yeah, that guy, a weasel, he tells Ukrainians that it's your decision, but trying to take back Crimea is a Russian red line. Say what? Yeah, that's exactly what this guy says. So I have this little big article here coming from the Telegraph. Ooh, must be true. February 16th, 2023. Ukraine warned against attempting to retake Crimea from Putin. What? By whom? By Putin himself? Anthony Blinken. Oh my. The US Secretary of State has warned a Ukrainian attempt to retake Crimea would be a red line for Vladimir Putin that could escalate the conflict, it has been reported. Now this is a red line that you take into consideration? Really? I mean, the Russians set red lines left and right, and what happened? They just retaliated. You are about to send tanks. You send medium-range missile systems. You are going to send long-range missile systems now. And you talk about this being a red line? What are you talking about? Mr. Blinken told a group of experts, ooh, they know what they're talking about, that the US is not seeking to actively encourage Kiev to reclaim the peninsula that was illegally annexed by Moscow in 2014 by a popular referendum, mind you. Hey, Kosovo. But because they did it, doesn't count if these guys do it, counts. All right, the U.S. I know. Sorry, the U.S. had nothing to do with Kosovo. They just intervened to save lives. All right, got it right? Okay. Did I wash my sins? All right, just a few of them. The U.S. diplomat said the decision should be left up to Ukraine to decide alone. Is this implying that every other decision was not left up to the Ukraine to decide alone? Okay. It came after Ukrainian drones were downed over Sevastopol, a major port home to Russia's Black Sea Fleet, according to the city's governor. Kiev's armed forces have reportedly launched a series of covert operations to hit Russian military targets on Crimean Peninsula. Yeah, but these two sentences here that I would like to, these two, not the whole thing, and I'm getting eerie from irritated. Now, these things here, did occur yesterday, or you mean occurred in the past, 7-8 months? And now you're concerned. President Zelensky has repeatedly pledged to regain the Russian-controlled territory on the southern tip of Ukraine. Kiev's resources better used elsewhere. Well, if you have to take from left and put it to the right, it means you don't have enough. Otherwise, you will say, well, we're going to use everything everywhere. That means you have to take from the left, put it to the right because you don't have enough to the right. But you're going to give left empty. But Mr. Blinken has always publicly expressed reservations at the prospect of Kiev launching serious attempts to recapture Crimea. Instead, he believes Joe Biden's administration should focus on supporting Ukraine's armed forces in the east of the country, where Russia is concentrating its fresh offensive efforts. The U.S. Secretary of State reiterated the long-held position during Zoom call with a group of experts, I'm assuming, according to political, experts, because it was experts out there, news website. According to people involved in the discussions, Mr. Blinken said Kiev's resources would be better used elsewhere on the battlefield than making an attempt to capture Crimea. The comments are likely to spark anger in Ukraine, given Mr. Zelensky's state war aims of liberating the peninsula. Well, why anger? Aren't you in control? You're doing your thing. These guys are just over there for your support, aren't they? What are you talking about? You are the defenders of Europe and love and happiness and all our values, like diversity, inclusion, equity, all these values, and all these things. And now you're telling me that you're going to get angry? Well, you were doing anything anyway. Those guys are not, they don't have an umbilical cord between you and Europe. And no, you do your thing, and if they help you, they help you. Anyway, but I understand the weasel tactic here. Kiev has said it would be able to use US-donated Army tactical missile systems, which have a range of nearly 200 miles and could be used to strike heavily fortified Russian positions in Crimea. If that happens, it's going to go to this. Recapturing Crimea would be war in itself. So that tells me again, and tells you something I've been telling you for a long time. What's going on in Crimea, in Ukraine war, is a very much controlled war. How can you control it? By communicating. So I'm saying that those guys must be communicating with those guys about these guys. Because the Russians would not do this, those guys tell this, don't do this. This is a controlled war. And when I say it's a total war, it's not a total war. A total war, remember what the Allies did to, let's say, Dresden. Remember what the Ally bombers did to the German city of Dresden and Hamburg? Go and look in the history and see what they did. They flattened it out. Now, that was bad total war. You say, well, the Germans did the same thing with V1, V2. Really? Really? I mean, was good? No, obviously it was bad, but that's total war. Atomic bombs dropped in Hiroshima and Nagasaki is total war because there's no more above that. What else could the Americans have done to destroy them? Chemical weapons? Not a big destruction as the atomic bombs, which were chemical weapons after that, right? The whole cloud and everything that fell on poor Japanese, the survivors of those attacks. So that was total war. So I don't see that in Ukraine at all. I don't want to see it. I want it stopped, but it's a controlled war, as I said from the very beginning. And I think it's a good thing to a certain extent, but I think stopping the war is the best thing. All right, so let's see what else. Military experts have suggested that recapturing Crimea would be a war in itself because it is defended by tens of thousands of Russian troops dug in defensive position. And the Russians will just F you up if you do that, I guarantee you that. They're going to bring everything they have. Not everything, but anyway. General Mark Milley, the U.S. top military commander, I don't feel comfortable with this guy in charge of the military whatsoever, said it would be, and I'm quoting, very, very difficult to militarily eject Russian forces from occupied areas, including Crimea. So last summer, Ukraine appeared to make a start on the plan, which is the plans by Kurt Volker, who said this would leave a lot of Russian forces without adequate support, without Ukraine actually trying to overrun Crimea, and it would still be a severe blow to Russia's military effort, a former U.S. special envoy for Ukraine. Well, last summer Ukraine appeared to make a start on that plan with attack on the Kerch Bridge and a number of military bases. And what happened after that? That happened on the 8th of, when was that? October, I think. 8th of October, and on the 9th of October and the 10th of October, the Russians started hitting massively Ukrainian civilian infrastructure, which is power plants and all that, and they kept doing that. Medvedev said, if you touch Crimea, which I think in a war is not like, oh, I'm not going to touch it, you know what I mean? If you touch Crimea, the doomsday is going to be on you. And probably that's what he meant. So the massive attacks on the infrastructure, critical infrastructure, was not conducted by the Russians before the Kerch Bridge. So yeah, keep doing that. The Russians have said, if you do this, we're going to do this. You escalate over there, we're going to escalate it here. The problem is, you say, well, and I say the same thing. If you, as Ukraine, claim Crimea to be yours and you want it back, you should have no limitations. Again, Russia invaded your territory, and they strike inside your territory, right? They start every other oblast. They hit Odessa, they hit Kiev, they hit Lviv or Lvov, right? Well, what makes you not hit their targets inside Russia? Let's say, I don't know, they did 2 or 3 times, that's all they did. They say, no, that's a red line. Why is it a red line? What do you mean? I mean, you shoot at my house and I'm not supposed to shoot at your house? So the same with Crimea. If Ukraine, and I think it should be totally up to the Ukrainian people and government to make all the decisions. The problem is, without everybody else behind them, like 40 other states that give them money, give them weapons, give them political support, place sanctions on those guys and so on. Without those, Ukraine will be coming back to March something when they were in Istanbul, right, in Turkey, and they say, let's talk about a peace. And then Boris Johnson landed the next day after the envoy came to Kiev. Boris Johnson, the then weasel Prime Minister of Great Britain, unfortunately, like Lizzie Truss and Sunak, Truss and Sunak, not better. And now it seems like Boris Johnson wants to come back. You don't have a better guy over there, man, a better person? Is only between these 3 weasels? Really? That's all you got? Jesus Christ. With these guys, Hitler would have just mowed you like that. With Sunak, Johnson, and Truss. And they say Johnson is going to have a comeback. That guy? You don't have anybody else? Well, in bad shape, my friends. A real bad shape. But you as a population, but interests are in great shape. I guarantee you that. Why do you think those guys are still in power? Jesus. Anyway, Jesus Christ has nothing to do with this. It's a disclaimer. So let's back to this one. The Ukrainians, if they lose this support, they will ask Russia for peace right now. They did that. No, they didn't ask for peace. In March, they'd have like 5 meetings, and they met in Istanbul, or I don't know if it was in Istanbul, when they had a little peace process started and so on. So that's why when you let your in-laws come and help you, then they will think that they have a say in your family affairs. That's why keep your in-laws outside if you know them. If they help you, and then they don't think that because they helped you they have a say in your life from then on, then avoid getting help from in-laws. All right, that's an advice. It didn't happen to me. It did not happen to me because from the very beginning I knew that, and I was like, shoops, this is the Great Wall of, not China because that's long, Great Wall of China, of Emil. Yeah, walls don't work, but somehow it worked in my case. So yeah, thank you very much for being with me again today. Stay strong, stay smart, look for the truth, and be just.